All right, welcome back to our second episode here of our CBB Rank Countdown series here on CBB Review Studio. Of course, Matt Mlodzinski here, Dan Siegel, Ariel, Puterman as well. So we've got 10 teams down. We did 100 through 91 last time. Today we're doing 90 through 81. Still a lot of mid-majors. We got some power conference teams in there as well. Guys, your overall thoughts about this group of 10 that we're about to talk about. Ariel, I'll start with you.
Yeah, a lot of good teams here, a lot of good mid-major teams as well. I think that this is a good group, a lot of potential, a lot of boomer bust as well. And we'll definitely talk about that in the upcoming minutes.
Yeah, a couple ACC teams I'm excited to get to, a couple teams that I feel like might have a little more upside than the ranking indicates, but I guess we could get right into it.
Yeah, so I'm 27 years old. How old are you guys?
25.
22.
So we each have about 80 years or so to go to catch up to Sister Jean. She turned 106 a couple days ago, and Loyola Chicago is who we start with today at number 90. We don't really need to talk about Sister Jean. We know that if she was on the court, she'd be dropping triple doubles every day. But how about these guys? Do we trust this Loyola Chicago team in the A10? Dan?
There's no such thing as trusting when it comes to the Atlantic 10. That's just the nature of the conference itself. It's just so wonky. It's so much cannibalism. Everybody beats up on each other, and they never get at-large bids. But in the scheme of the A10, I do like Loyola Chicago. After a rough start in their first year in the Atlantic 10, it's starting to make a lot more sense. They've had 2 years winning well over 20 games. Drew Valentine is back for his fourth year. Miles Rubin returns at the center spot, just an elite everything, rebounder, shot blocker, pretty efficient scoring as well. Not like someone who's going to put up 17 points per game, but very efficient with the ball in his hands. Couple guys that underperformed at good programs coming in as well. So if these guys could step up, talking about Dominic Harris from UCLA, Xavier Amos from Wisconsin, those guys could step up. That's how Loyola reaches their ceiling in my eyes.
Ariel, what is the ceiling for Loyola Chicago?
Yeah, I think their ceiling is maybe a win in the tournament. I don't think it's much more than that. I will say, I think that after the Porter Moser years, people kind of wrote off Loyola Chicago just because they haven't been a tournament team like we expected them to. But they've been really solid behind the scenes. They've won 23-plus games in 3 of those 4 years under Drew Valentine. If he has another good year this year, I wouldn't be surprised if one of those power conference teams goes and plucks him away from Loyola Chicago, because he is a really great coach. And I think with more of a talent pool, he could really elevate a team. I really love Miles Rubin, their center. Last year in the NIT, he shot 89% from the field on their run to the semifinals. I mean, I think he missed like 2 shots the whole tournament, which is crazy. Now, he's not going to shoot 89%. I think he could shoot 70%. But if he can do that on 10 points per game, then he could be a really valuable asset. And then, like you mentioned, Dominic Harris, he averaged about 14 points per game at Utah Valley. Went to UCLA last year, wanted to try out the power conferences. Did not work out for him. Now he's back down to the A10, which is kind of in between that, Utah Valley and UCLA range, but he could definitely be an X factor for them.
I think we all think Loyola Chicago is a team to watch. I want to mention Daewoo Tavares, too. You got him as your 6-man, Ariel. I think he could even be a guy to maybe crack the starting 5, and if not, it gives them a really good guy off the bench coming over from Charleston. I know we talked last episode about George Washington. Just quick one-word answers from you. Are you taking GW or Loyola Chicago this year?
Ooh, I think GW, but I think 7 times out of 10, Loyola Chicago is probably the better team, but just in terms of potential, GW is probably the higher value team there.
Yeah, I'm going GW as well.
All right. I know obviously, we have more people that do these rankings, but I know us 3 are pretty high on GW. Let's go to another team. Out of the MAC, up next is Akron. They've been pretty good for the past couple of years. They've really sustained some success with their head coach, Ariel. I know you probably have something to talk about that, so I'll go right back to you.
Yeah, they've dominated the MAC the last couple of years. I mean, last year they went 17-1 in conference play. The year before that, they were really good with Enrique Freeman and Ali Ali. This year, team isn't looking as talented. Nate Johnson is gone. He was their leading scorer last year, but Tavari Johnson is still there, and he could be a real X factor. He averaged about 13 points per game last year. I think with Nate Johnson gone, and they didn't really go and replace the Nate Johnson just in terms of last year's scoring production. So I think he could really have a special year. Between him and Miami, Ohio, who we talked about last episode, I think it'll be a really exciting race. But I don't know if they can edge out Miami, Ohio, but I certainly trust them more.
Ooh.
Yeah. Then again, I talked about in the last episode, the way the MAC is formatted, you really never know. I think that's the clear top two, though. Miami of Ohio and Akron. I think they both lose a maximum of like 3, maybe 4 conference games, if that. I like another guy, Evan Mahaffney, moves down from Ohio State. Former 4-star, never really reached his potential. There's a lot of times where guys who were 4-star recruits like 3-4 years ago just should never have been 4-star recruits, or they just didn't pan out to their full potential, and we should ignore the fact that they're a 4-star recruit. But in the MAC, talent is talent, and I think that's definitely a significant acquisition for them.
100%. I think we all know John Gross has done a great job at Akron. Like you said, I like Miami, Ohio's talent. When we talked about them a couple times ago, I forget what they were ranked, but somewhere in the low 90s, I believe. But Akron definitely has the years of experience to go off of that Miami, Ohio doesn't. So maybe that's why we have them ranked a little bit higher. Let's go back to the A10 for number 88. That is Dayton. Again, I'm not going to ask you the same question about who you're taking over GW, because I know that we both love George Washington. But why should we believe in Dayton this season? Dan, I'll go to my A10 expert first.
Yeah, well, former A10 expert, current MAC expert, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a make or break year for Anthony Grant for like the 4th year in a row or something like that. I feel like we say that every single preseason. They are somehow recruiting pretty decently despite that in terms of freshmen. They have 3 guys all around that top 200 range. Javon Bennett is back. That is huge. He'll be asked to do a lot of the scoring. They don't have a ton of perennial scorers, but Javon Bennett is one of them. They also got a kid from Iona, Adam Niche, who is another guy who is just an offensive playmaker and going to be asked to do a lot on this team. One more guy I'll talk about, Jordan Durkak from Rutgers, projects as their starting 4. He's coming off of an extremely disappointing year at Rutgers. I believe he was at Merrimack before that, but we talk about Rutgers a lot, and a team that they had 2 top 5 picks and they still stunk. Why is that? Well, because of guys like Jordan Durkak. So not to pick on him specifically, but that's somebody I do worry about if he's cracking your starting 5.
Yeah, I think we've really shown how tight the A10 is going to be this year. I think we've had 4 teams between, 88 and 100. So just shows how close that'll be. We've been ranked 3rd in the conference in our projections. One guy I'm going to highlight is Amael Latang, freshman last year. He's 7'1", super athletic, great wingspan, great potential defender. He can also shoot the ball. He's a guy who could really transform and be a really special player for this team, and even work his way up to a 1st-round pick, maybe even lottery if he really breaks out. So Javon Bennett's the safe guy. You know what you're going to get from him. But Latang, if he could really pan out and be a special player, kind of like a Deron Holmes, that kind of player, then I think Dayton has a lot of potential this year.
Yeah, I'll agree. I think the potential's there. I'm really worried about this bench. Unless Bryce Hurd can make a freshman to sophomore jump, I don't think transferring from an ACC school in NC State to an A10 school is going to, the talent level isn't that different from conference to conference. So it's really going to be about, okay, can he make that sophomore jump? And if he can, then I think Dayton's bench all of a sudden is looking halfway decent. If he can't, then where's the scoring production coming from? But I do agree with you guys. A lot of potential on this Flyers team. Speaking about the ACC, let's move to Georgia Tech. This is fun. We get to talk power conference ball. I'll start for a sec here. Georgia Tech lost a lot. They honestly did. But Damon Stoudemire is back, and honestly still like what this Georgia Tech team has. I mean, even though they lose 4 double-digit scores, they still have Lamar Washington from Pacific, started his career at Texas Tech. Still got Kawachi Reeves, a guy who has had kind of tough injuries throughout his career, but who knows? Maybe if he can be healthy, he can be a guy to look at. And then you got a guy, Cam Kraft. We talked about Miami, Ohio. He's the one guy that didn't stay with the Red Hawks, chose to go to the Yellow Jackets. I think he's in for a big role. They've got a really good front court to watch out for. That's my 2 cents. Dan, what do you think about this Yellow Jacket squad?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last 2 years we've talked about Georgia Tech as a pesky team, a team with talent, but a team that was not winning a ton of basketball games. And now it's year 3 for Damon Stoudemire. It's time to start winning. You don't have the, we're young, we're super young excuse anymore. You talked about Bay and Dongo, a real stat stuffer in the front court. You said, I think it was your article, Matt, you said he may be the most talented power forward in the ACC. So that's that's some significant praise right there. I'll let Ariel take more of the lead here, but one thing I do want to say is Georgia Tech last year, if you believe in their aggression monster, they had one of the worst free throw percentage discrepancies between offense and defense in the country. So they were making very few free throws. They were opponents against them were making a lot of free throws. Again, one of those percentage wise, one of those you can control, one of those you can't. But hopefully that like evens out a little bit this year.
Yeah, we have them ranked 14th. I think that's a good spot for them in the ACC. Like you said, they've lost a lot, and that's going to be hard to replace. I do really like their front court of Ndongo and Mohamed Silla, freshman. I think defensively they could be really, really tough to go against in the paint. And that could be a difference maker for them to just kind of keep games low scoring, just because they haven't really been able to replace that scoring, even though Cam Kraft coming in from Miami, Ohio is a good piece. If they can kind of slow things down and steal a couple wins there, I think that they could be a little bit higher than 87th overall. But just in terms of the ACC, I think, it's definitely taken a couple steps down the last couple of years, but I like what a lot of teams did this offseason. I think that'll kind of have a little bit of a resurgence, and I don't think Georgia Tech had a good enough offseason to put themselves in that top 10 or even in that top 12 maybe.
I will say you definitely have to game plan around a guy like Ndongo. I mean, he is just so smooth around the rim when he goes into pick and rolls. I mean, he definitely knows how to get to the bucket offensively. I think the bench is good. Chaz Kelly, Jaden Mustaf, and then you look at Peyton Marshall, 7 foot, 300 pounds. I mean, what can that guy bring in the paint? And then a guy like Davy Remagen, international prospect. You never know what you're getting in that. So I actually like this overall core. I think we could have ranked them maybe more close to 10 or 11 in the ACC. But, hey, also when you look at a power conference team compared to mid-major teams, sometimes the stats just jump off a little bit more. And then you realize, maybe this is the same old Georgia Tech squad. Let's move on to Dan's team. He wrote this one. That is North Texas. They've been another team that's kind of been around the past handful of years. So, Dan, I'll jump to you because you wrote this article, so I know you probably have a bit to say on the mean green. Not the nice green, the mean green.
Yeah, and they keep getting their coaches poached. That's kind of what happens when you are a successful mid-major. Now, here's Danielle Robinson coming from Cleveland State. This is not a roster, I think, that's designed to win big right away. I think they could certainly handle themselves in the American Conference. They're not the AAC anymore, right? Is that like the rebrand that they've had?
Yeah, the rebrand.
So it's just the American. Either way, whatever you want to call them, they're not nearly as good as they were 5-7 years ago. So I think they could win games there. From Cleveland State, 4 transfers followed Robinson. Dylan Arnett is the most proven commodity. Not sure what their lineup construction will exactly look like. He is a traditional big man, though, that is big. That is great both ways. The one thing I do think this roster does lack, and the thing I'm super worried about, is their shooting. And there's no real shooters in the starting lineup. The only guy on this roster I think that has the real upside is this JUCO transfer, goes by Kamai Crosby. Really good playmaker, 42.1% from 3 at the JUCO level last year. But again, you never know how that translates over. So the competition level will be more steep in the American for him. And I think this is the team that like sneaks into that like 22, 23 win mark, but isn't like a real bracketology team to watch.
I'm glad you said that, because my overall take on North Texas was kind of like Drake last episode, where the talent on the team doesn't scream tournament team by any means or even top 100 team, but you know that they're going to end up with 22, 23 wins just because that program has had so much success in the past. Even with a whole new roster, they just find ways to win and find ways to succeed with their hiring and their talent development. So one guy I'll shout out is Will McClendon. He wasn't very efficient as a shooter, but he was a leader for that San Jose State team, who wasn't great last year by any means. But when you're coming in with a completely new roster, you kind of need a guy to step up. I think that he's comfortable in that position. So it'll be good to have him on the team. But like I said, the talent isn't screaming tournament team by any means, but you can't doubt this North Texas program, just the success they've had the last couple of years.
Yeah, my biggest scare here comes with, there's really just no one coming back, right? It's literally a whole new team. So I know we say that this is a North Texas program that has been pretty good, but like it's technically kind of a new program, right? Like other than guys way up top, basketball operations guys, This is a brand new team, brand new identity. We'll see if they made the right choice to hire there. How about, speaking about Drake, a team they play in conference, Illinois State at 85. I was a little bit surprised by this ranking, to be honest, guys. Ariel, I know you made this this article, and to be honest, after reading about this team, I'm not surprised. I was surprised that we had Illinois State in. Maybe I didn't do my due diligence before the season started because they clearly deserve to be in the top 100. I'll let you take the reins on this one.
Yeah, I love this Illinois State team. I mean, last year they won the CBI, so huge accomplishment for a program like that. They get Chase Walker back. Bennett Sturts isn't there anymore, so I think he's the favorite to win that conference MVP. Yep. They also bring back Johnny Kinzinger, who's a really great scorer, and I think with that extra year of experience, he could really break out. And then Bowden Skunberg from North Dakota State. He missed all of last season, but he was with the program. Now he's back. He averaged about 14 points per game with that team. Which will make a really good backcourt with him and Kinzinger. So between those three, and then they have a really solid depth as well. They returned a lot of guys from last year, that team that won the CBI. So I'm really bought in on this team. And the Missouri Valley, I think, took a little bit of a step down with Drake, with all those guys gone, but still always going to be a tough conference. And I think they have what it takes, not only to win that conference, but I think to keep a game close in the tournament as well.
If you're comparing the top two in the Missouri Valley, which we clearly believe is this Illinois State team, and Drake, it's kind of two polar opposites. There's Drake, who we are not sure who's going to score, but we know they could fall back on their defense. We're talking about Illinois State, and under Ryan Padron, this defense could not make stops for the life of them, especially last year. And Ariel went through the roster. Like, they have a ton of guys that are able to score, but if their defense is outside of the top 150, I'm not sure that they're necessarily a team that can keep a tournament game close or even be invincible through the conference tournament just because of that. So that's what I worry about, is their defense, because I think they're definitely going to have top 75, even top 60 offensive upside in terms of efficiency and like the metrics.
Yeah, look, they look like a good team. They got three guys that are going to be able to really put the ball in the bucket, not even just double-digit scorers. I mean, three guys that could each average around 15 a game. So you're going to get buckets from this team. Defensively, if that's good too, then, I mean, this could be, like you mentioned, this could be a team that wins 25-plus games in the Missouri Valley. And I'm really bought in on this Illinois State team as well. So I'm glad we do have them in our top 100. Glad someone made that choice. Let's move on. Ariel, I'm literally just going to deflect this to you right away because our next team is High Point, and you are pretty much a graduate of High Point at this point.
I wish. I mean, what a cool campus. I'd love to go there one day. But yeah, they lost a lot this offseason. Obviously, they lost Alan Huss, their coach, who really turned this program around. They lose pretty much every other key player from this team. As much as I love this High Point team, I don't think I'd put them ahead of any other team below them on this top 80 or 90 to 84 level. One guy who could be interesting is Cameron Fletcher. Started out at Florida State, high 4-star, like we talked about earlier. A guy who didn't really pan out, and he's kind of been going lower and lower, and now he finds his spot at High Point. If he can figure himself out, he could be really great. Rob Martin as well. He's 5'10", but he's a great scorer. Averaged about 15 points per game last year. The Big South is obviously super weak, and they can just run through this conference with ease, and that's going to maybe boost their ranking up a little bit. But besides that, I'm not it really pains me to say this as someone who's been such an advocate the last 2 years, but I just don't love this team, to be honest.
Yeah, I think promoting from in-house in terms of head coaching with Alan Huss going over to Creighton, and then you bring in your associate head coach Flynn Clayton to take over. Like, I'm not sure that route, that strategy usually tends to work, especially because you're still having a ton of roster turnover anyway. So it's not like you could fall back on, we have this continuity. We're not, completely overthrowing the coaching staff, whatever. But if they want to play a similar style as to last year where they're scoring 1 million points, I don't think they have the roster that allows that. They have a couple of proven mid-major transfers, but not in abundance. One guy I think Ariel did not talk about is Yusuf Singare from UConn. Mm-hmm. Somebody that will have an opportunity to play finally, because he was just behind some great centers in his 2 years in the Huskies program. So we really don't know what we're getting out of him. There's some upside. There's a chance he's absolutely irrelevant, but somebody I'm going to point out.
Yeah, look, I think he's going to be a guy that could really change what this High Point team becomes, right? Because you win a national championship at UConn when he was a freshman. What's he going to be, now as a junior? When he's had 2 years, when he hasn't really been able to see the court too much, but what he learned from that program, what can you bring to a team like High Point? I think that's an X factor there. I do like this team, but like you mentioned, it's not going to be – this is not your father's High Point basketball team. This is not Ariel's High Point basketball team. It's a different one, but we still love them the same. How about a team that we always seem to love and we always just love to talk about, and that is DePaul. We talked about Loyola Chicago, but when you talk about Chicago basketball, you talk about Chicago State and you talk about DePaul, right? These are the teams that we care about.
Loyola Chicago, too.
Well, yeah. Can DePaul be better than they were last year? I think that's the big question, because DePaul was a pretty solid team compared to how they were in the past, right? They used to be terrible. Last year they won 14 games. They did win 4 in conference, which is a huge step up. That's like a 400% increase, perhaps. But can we see a DePaul team that actually can compete in the Big East? I think that's the question. I'll hand it off to you, Dan, first.
Yeah, we're talking about some lovable losers here when we're talking about the Chicago basketball team, Chicago State, DePaul. Like, can DePaul get to the point where they're actually taken seriously? This year, I'm not sure, because Chris Holtman didn't have the troops in year one. I think his roster is marginally better, but only marginally better.
Mm-hmm.
Leighton Blocker is a great two-way point guard. Not quite living up to the name. He's like more of a small point guard, but he's a pretty good defensive player. I think Caleb Banks from Tulane could be a difference maker in the front court. One thing about this DePaul team, if they want to get to I don't know, what's a successful DePaul season, like 500 or better, they have a lot of experience on their roster. 5 of their top 6 are in at least their 4th year in Division I college basketball. The other is in his 3rd. So a lot of experience. Experience does help. Of course, a lot of power conference teams are experienced in this era, but it's definitely something that's notable.
First of all, shout out to State of Illinois. 3 teams in this 90-83 so far between Loyola, Illinois State, and DePaul. As a new Chicago resident, it's good to see my state represented, and I'll be a little biased here as a new member of Chicago, but I like this DePaul team. I think that the bottom of the Big East is looking rough this year, and I think that they could take advantage of that, just with Providence really struggling, Seton Hall. So I think that they can climb.
Hey now.
Sorry, Matt. Former NIT champions, Seton Hall. So I think with the returning guys that they had in Blocker and CJ Gunn, as well as Caleb Banks, who you mentioned, Dan, who averaged about 15 points per game last year on a good Tulane team. I think that trio, plus Chris Holtman, who's a great coach, and you can see how much Ohio State has struggled since he's been gone, even though they weren't necessarily as successful those last few years. I think that he's really done a good job of turning this program around and kind of changing the culture. And I don't think they'll be a tournament team by any means, but I think 83 is a good spot for them.
Yeah, I think they could maybe even add a couple wins. Maybe they win 6 games in the Big East or something like that, and generally go 500. I think that's what we can expect out of DePaul this season. How about a sleeper team in my eyes? Florida State at number 82. I just want to talk about them a little bit. You bring in Robert McCray, the 5th from Jacksonville, just a great big scorer. Kobe McGee, LeJay Jones. I mean, this team is going to be big. They might not have Leonard Hamilton, but they're going to be big all around, and that's kind of what we expect from a Florida State team. Chauncey Wiggins, Ali Malouk. I mean, the list goes on and on. Martin Somerville, a guy who I have projected as the second guy off the bench. He could even start, maybe. You never know. I mean, you just never know what this team wants to go with. I just feel like Florida State has a great roster, pretty much 1 through 7. Even after that, some sleeper guys to play. Guys, do we think that this team, they're clearly better than Georgia Tech, and I think they could be even like a top 75 team if we're really looking at it. I think Florida State could make a run and shock some people in the ACC.
I think this Florida State team is extremely wide in terms of the range of outcomes. And for starters, I think the complete turnover in the program was unfortunately necessary. Leonard Hamilton had his time. His time is unfortunately past. And, I think bringing over a guy from the NBA ranks, that's one particularly unknown factor. Also, just the way the roster is constructed. Their backcourt just has so many mid-major all-stars. you don't know how that necessarily pans out. That could be great, could be not. There's a lot of options there. So we don't know what their starting lineup will look like. Their front court does worry me, specifically defensively. They have a couple guys that can maybe score, but then Shahid Muhammad from UMass, their defensive specialist, I think he had zero offensive value whatsoever. If he's in your rotation, I kind of worry about that. But yeah, there's a lot of like unknowns with this team. First year of a head coach. 82 is maybe like the median of their potential results, but there's just so many different ways this Florida State team could go. They could be like top 6, top 7 in the ACC if it's bad enough.
Dan, we're on the same page with this. I think that there's a lot more bust potential than boom potential just because they didn't really bring in a lot of power conference guys. You bring in Chauncey Wiggins, who was good for Clemson, but he was a 4th, 5th option. And then you bring in a couple really talented mid-major guys to kind of lead that backcourt. But, like you said, it's hard to play up. And I don't know if those guys really showed that they can, besides maybe McGray, who was a great player last year. We saw this kind of trend. BYU started it. Utah did the same. Now Florida State, where you hired that high-level NBA assistant to kind of modernize your college basketball team and make it more of a pro-style offense and defense. So it'll be interesting to see if that pans out, especially in the ACC, where, like I said, a lot of teams had really good off seasons and are looking promising this year. So it'll be hard to replace Leonard Hamilton and all he did, even though the last couple years have been pretty rough. But it'll be interesting. It's always interesting to see this experiment with the new coaches and that style. So I'm excited to watch this team, unless it gets ugly.
Look, I will say this. Somerville is a guy that I want to highlight because they bring in a lot of mid-major guys, and I think good point, right? Like, I watched Syracuse, obviously. That's my team, and they brought in a lot of mid-major guys last year, and it didn't work out because a lot of them just couldn't play up. So they run that risk. But what I will say about Somerville is he put up those numbers as a freshman, right? So at least for him, you have the chance to work with him where even if he struggles a little bit this year, you could still have 2 more years if you can buy him into the program. So I think the future there in getting a guy like that is he put up great numbers as a freshman. That's good. With the other guys, it really is going to be a hit or miss. So I can see what you guys are saying there, but I am intrigued by this team. We'll move on to our final team of this episode, and that is UC Santa Barbara out of the Big West. The last year, what should have been like a 9-team Big West, but unfortunately we didn't get that. Ariel, can they make a play at the tournament again?
Absolutely. The big name taker here is Aiden Mahaney, who committed here. For those who remember his freshman and sophomore year at St. Mary's, he was phenomenal. One of the best freshmen in the country, truly, as a freshman 2 years or 3 years ago, and then was equally as good his sophomore year. So I had to move up to UConn and just couldn't figure it out there. And the big reason why was his defense. Big East teams really, anytime he was on the court, they just kind of picked at him and kind of played him off the court. The only thing I'm worried about with him is we've kind of been given the blueprint to play him off the court. It will be interesting to see if the Big West can do that as well. But if he's on the court, he's one of the best players in the conference, without a question. So I'm really excited to see him back in that level of play. I also like Miro Little. He was another theme of this episode, of a high 4-star who just really hasn't panned out at the power conference level. Now he's kind of playing down. He could be an electric backcourt running mate with Mahaney. And then Zion Sensley is another guy I wanted to highlight. He was a top-rated recruit in UCSB history last year. I think ESPN ranks him in the top 100. 247 was in like the top 130, but didn't really get a lot of opportunity last year. He played 10-plus minutes 5 times last year, and 4 of those times he scored 10-plus points. So with an added role this year, I think he'll be a 6-man. If Miro Little struggles, he could even enter in that starting lineup. I think with those extra minutes and that year of experience, I think he could be a real breakout player and a guy who could easily be an all-conference player if he pans out.
I think we hit the nail on the head with this 81 ranking. It's definitely going to be them and UC Irvine in the Big West, albeit it's a much deeper league than you would expect. Aiden Mahaney is a guy I never really liked him that much. I'll be honest. I think I've definitely discussed this before. I feel like all of his popularity, all of the love that he gets comes from just one massive, massive half that he had in a Gonzaga game a couple of years ago. But in reality, he wasn't the most efficient scorer on the court. He had some brutal shooting nights at even back at St. Mary's. I'm not going to like take a victory lap over somebody failing at the power conference level, but I wasn't really in love with him at UConn last year. But I do think this is a decent level for him. I think he's definitely an impact player, not a star, but like whatever is below a star. And Zion Sensley, along with him, going into his second season, he's the guy I think could really raise their ceiling. So, like you said, top-rated recruit in UCSB history. Definitely high potential him, getting him back for his second year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aiden Mahaney, you talk about the defense. When he was out there on the court and played good for UConn in some games, he still had some pretty big games. I mean, I think he's a guy who can run the offense and hit the three, right? Like, I think when you talk about it, defense and driving to the bucket and hitting tough shots, that's when you're like, okay, what's Aiden Mahaney going to bring there? But I think they've got other guys that can do that, right? You got Jason Fontenette, Colin Smith. I mean, those guys were pretty solid players for this team last season. They could definitely both spark up and average north of 11, 12 points per game this year. And all of a sudden, Mahaney's got a couple guys that can help him out. So I like this UCSB team as well. I think they are the team to beat here in the Big West. And, UC Irvine's always there. But when you look at what they lost and when you look at what this team lost, it was much fewer and they brought in more. So I do like this UCSB team to be the team to beat in this conference. Boys, that is 10 more teams down. Again, make sure to keep up with us on Instagram and read these articles here on cbbreview.com as we're putting those out. And still trying to catch up a little bit, admittedly, but I think we're doing a good job. We've got some in the drafts that'll be posted, and you'll love to read about these teams because we're kind of getting, out of the, borderline top 100 teams into teams that we really deserve to be talking about, and that's where we're at in this point in the offseason. So for Dan Siegel, for Ariel Puterman, I'm Matt Mlodzinski. Thanks for watching.